Good morning, Lesson in the World. It is Tuesday morning, November the 11th, and a short time ago we wrapped up this most recent unit by talking about Europe before World War I, reflecting on themes of modernity and a culture of progress in that time period. I thought this morning I was something less than my most coherent. So I'm hoping that in this video I can try to distill a few essential insights. One of the big ideas that figured into our conversation today was the idea of progress. And what we said was that people who lived at the end of the 19th century lived at a time when the vast majority of people understood themselves to be undeniably and indisputably living in an age of progress. The signs of this were everywhere as far as they understood what that would mean. Right? The technological innovations of industrialization, the wealth accumulation that went along with those same processes, the expansion of their nation's overseas military powers. And then there were other things too, like the expansion of literacy and the seeming growth of knowledge that were characteristic of this age. All of these things gave to people this sense that the world was moving in a very forward kind of direction. That progress was the theme of the time. On the other hand, those very same signs of progress also became the focal points for certain ideas, and this is where we really concentrated today, that sort of disquieted or upset people's sense of the sort of inevitability of progress. So take economics, for example. That the dramatic economic growth that is happening is also accompanied by increased labor unrest. Powerful movements representing the demands of working class people for better working conditions and better wages. Or the science that had emerged that was supposed to be the engine of this innovation in the works of the Curies and Max Planck and especially Albert Einstein produces what are literally or quite literally mind-bending ideas that tell us that the world doesn't operate in the same kind of with the same kind of certainty that had been understood before. That physics is a much messier endeavor, especially, of course, in Einstein's theory of relativity and quantum mechanics. There are other signs that we focused on as well of sort of the disquiet of the age. A century of relative peace and stability is about to be utterly undone in the devastation of World War I, and the political tenor of this age is one that points to people's expectation that a final test of strength may be coming. And so we talked, for example, about the Triple Alliance and the Triple Entente as sort of people's anticipation that something was on the horizon. An increasingly militaristic spirit that it was exhibited in many nations as a consequence of simply not having much lived experience of the devastations of war. And then, of course, there were the broader sort of philosophical and intellectual, cultural expressions. And here we talked about Nietzsche and Freud as examples of the sort of centrality of the irrational. In some ways, of course, building off of an earlier stage of thinking that was represented in the person of Charles Darwin. But no longer understanding the human personality as distinctly driven by rational features. Freud, for example, demonstrates for us the operation of an unconscious mind that we don't fully control. And then lastly, we looked at the expression, the changing patterns of artistic expression, characteristic of Impressionism, Post-Impressionism, and then Cubism and other modernist art movements. Your book gives you some other insights into the ways in which these sort of represent a challenge to the artistic status quo. But it's the gap, I suppose, between the naturalism of a Leonardo da Vinci in the Renaissance and the cubism of a Pablo Picasso and La Demoiselle d'Avignon, that marks out the radically different age within which people now find themselves. All of these things, he said, are really representative of the thinking of a few. These are not widespread, mainstream ideas by any stretch. But what we'll see after the exam is that World War I sort of unleashes these forces and leads people to ask sort of new questions and to look for some new answers to help them sort of reorient themselves to the unexpected devastation of what is still to come. But those are things we'll talk about after the exam. Good luck with your studying. See you on Thursday.